Sciatica is a problem with the sciatic nerve. The sciatic nerve is the longest and largest nerve in the body. If you look at the width of your thumb, okay, that's usually the width of that nerve where it comes out. And it comes out of the lower back and the sacrum, okay? And there's five nerves that form this one sciatic nerve. And when we have a problem with that nerve, that's called sciatica. Now, there are some great, wonderful stretches that you can find on the internet. I've done videos on that, which are great for sciatica. But the problem is what happens later in the day or the next day when it comes right back. So today we're going to talk about what we can do to actually correct this problem without having to use medication. But you still want to do the stretches as well. All right, so what do we know about sciatica? Well, we know 90% of the time it involves the disc. And the disc is basically, it has an outside and it has an inside. The inside is like a little jelly donut. And what happens when the outer part of that disc gets weakened, some of that jelly can kind of squeeze out, and that can put pressure on part of the nerve roots that make up the sciatic nerve. And then you'll have pain either in your butt or it travels down the back of the leg all the way down to the foot or the outer part of the leg. And sometimes it's not just like severe pain, it could be a numbness, it could be a burning, it could be a gnawing, like a deep kind of irritating type sensation. The reason I'm even doing this video is that I found this condition that was interesting to me because I haven't really heard about it before. And that condition is called myeloneuropathy. Myeloneuropathy, what does that mean? That's M-Y-E-L-O, myelo. Well, that word means the marrow of your spinal column. And that's composed of like a lot of different nerves that come up and down the spinal column, and then they come out. And neuropathy means some type of damage to the nerve. So this condition, myeloneuropathy, is really a combination of a problem in the spinal column and the nerves that come out called the peripheral nerves. And this can give you a lot of different nerve problems, including a lot of sensory nerve problems, like I just mentioned, like the burning, the gnawing, the numbness, severe pain, and even weakness in the muscle because these nerves connect with muscles. But what really interests me about this condition that I never heard before is that it's a copper deficiency most of the time, or a vitamin E or folate deficiency, but the majority of the time it's a copper deficiency. So I started looking at copper in relationship to the sciatic nerve, and I found some fascinating information. Number one, there's all sorts of different types of therapy that use copper for inflammation and pain, like copper bracelets, copper patches, copper cream, and even a brace that you could wrap around your upper hip area that can cover the sciatic nerve, or at least the origin of the sciatic nerve, and it's laced with copper. And a lot of people are reporting amazing results with that. And we don't really know exactly why copper can help pain and inflammation. And I'm talking about just topically putting it on the body. I mean, something could be actually potentially kind of being absorbed, maybe, but maybe not. But I know copper is a very conductive metal. And so maybe it does something with the electrical fields that are out of balance in the area of pain. I don't know. And there's not hardly any research on this at all, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. I mean, the amount of people that are reporting great relief from this, I mean, I'm talking about skeptical people, is quite large. So I'm not just going to wait for the next study or someone to invest in the study to prove that it might work, because it's a very low risk, non toxic, relatively inexpensive thing that anyone can do. And even in ancient Egyptian times, they used copper bracelets, copper jewelry for their pain, inflammation, and arthritis. And since we're on the topic of arthritis, the Arthritis Foundation said that there's no validity to using these copper bracelets or even magnetic bracelets. So you know you want to try it because whatever they say not to do usually is going to work very well. Simply because of who funds these organizations, right? Drug companies. I don't know. For all I know, they probably started some of these foundations. Now that's using copper externally. But what about this copper deficiency? What does that have to do with anything? Well, it has to do with a lot because it's involved with quite a few different enzymes. And one of the enzymes that create a big impact on sciatica is the enzyme that uses copper as an essential cofactor for building collagen and connective tissue. And guess what? Is your disc made of collagen? Well, yeah, 75% of the outer part of that disc is made from collagen. So if you're deficient in collagen, could it be possible that you can have a weakness within the disc? Now, copper is also used in enzymes that involve nerves, okay? The nervous system, nerve transmission, and even myelin that protects the nerve. So a lot of things start lining up in relationship to looking at a copper deficiency and potentially having a sciatic type problem. I know other people might develop like carpal tunnel syndrome when they have a copper deficiency as well. So, copper is essential for collagen. And I've done other videos on collagen before and talking about how important vitamin C is in making collagen. But guess what? If you look in nature, copper makes up part of that vitamin C complex. So we have copper for collagen and connective tissue. We also have copper for the nervous system. Certain parts of your brain have very high levels of copper. Dopamine, this is why there's usually a copper deficiency when a person has Parkinson's involving dopamine. And we know dopamine involves the nerve muscle connection and issues with that. Copper is also involved in making energy, helping you sleep, also in making melanin, which helps prevent graying of the hair. It's also involved with red blood cells, and we're going to come back to that in a second. It's involved in the formation of bone and is an antioxidant. So, how would someone become deficient in copper? Well, a lot of people are deficient in copper from various reasons. One is they don't have enough copper in the diet, which I will get into, like what foods are high in that. But it's really high in the shellfish and organ meats, which two things that people don't consume a lot of. Also, athletes are usually low in copper because they're doing a lot of physical exercise that use up a lot of energy that require an increased demand of copper, and especially if they're doing exercise at higher altitudes, because that involves strain on the red blood cell. But the more exercise you do, the more copper you're going to need. And you can imagine if an athlete is really working out and they're not eating right, they can end up with a copper deficiency and then have a weakness within the connective tissue or collagen and create a problem with the tendons, ligaments, muscles, and discs. Now, also, if you take a lot of zinc, okay, without the opposing mineral copper, you can create a copper deficiency as well. Also, if you take a lot of iron, you can deplete your copper. There's many different reasons why enriched flour products, as in the breads, the pasta type foods, can deplete copper. Fluoride from your tap water definitely depletes copper. Too much vitamin C, but mainly in the form of ascorbic acid. Sometimes people do certain remedies where they're taking like certain, like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 grams of ascorbic acid. That's going to deplete your copper as well. A lot of sweating can deplete your copper because copper can come out through the sweat. Too much sun tanning can actually deplete your copper because of the connection with melanin. Melanin requires copper. And then you also have stress and even too much of the precursor DHEA, which actually is the raw material to make cortisol. Too much of that or too much cortisol can deplete your copper. Even when you have a lot of potassium, without these trace minerals like copper, that can worsen the deficiency. And of course, you have distilled water as well. You're going to create a deficiency of all the minerals with distilled water. You have to put those back in. Also, we have high levels of niacin can deplete copper to a certain degree. So as I'm going through these, it's just an important thing to remember. Anytime you take a lot of one nutrient without the others in the complexes, especially if you're not getting food sources, you can create imbalances. Gastric bypass, you're going to have a tendency to be deficient in not just copper, but other trace minerals. If you eat too much sugar, you can actually have deficiency, or even too much coffee and alcohol can do it. And even aspartame as an artificial sweetener can deplete your copper. But I think there's one additional thing that's very, very important. And I looked at this as well. Um, Probably people that have sciatica also have a genetic issue with copper being absorbed, creating a deficiency, even though you're taking normal amounts. And that's related to kind of a topic I've been deeply studying on DNA. It's called polymorphism. That's a mutation or an error in the gene that can leave you deficient in certain things. Well, I found two different genes that if you have a problem with that, you most likely will have a copper deficiency, and then that can relate to other issues as well. And the study that talks about that associates a higher level of getting carpal tunnel syndrome, which is pain in the wrist, as well as compression fractures because copper is involved in the bone because a certain part of your bone is made out of collagen. All right, so all this is very interesting, but what can you do about it? Well, you have options. One really good remedy might be to do a search on Amazon to find one of those copper braces. And when you see the copper braces, it looks like it supports the hip, but it wraps around the buttocks, right where that sciatic nerve comes out, and it's in the upper thigh, and it's lined with copper. That might be a really good solution to give you temporary relief, as well as these other products that have copper patches or even a copper cream. But it's also important, number two, to make sure you're getting enough copper from the food. And so the food that has the most copper would be beef liver. It could be any liver, but liver in general. Number two, oysters. Number three, shellfish. Number four, dark chocolate. Of course, get the sugar free. Number five, cashews. And number six, meat in general, like grass fed beef. Now, number three, if you're going to do a copper supplement, okay, which is not a bad idea because that way you can actually correct it. And by chance, if you have this genetic weakness, you're going to have to take a little more than just the bare bones amount. So, what I would recommend is I would start with 2 milligrams of copper per day and slowly increase that over a period of 1 month to 20 milligrams. And you can do the math on that, but every several days you take a little bit more and more and more until you achieve 20 milligrams. So you might need these higher amounts to make the change necessary for your disc to start healing up and your nervous system to start healing up. And then after a month, you can play around with it, reduce the dosage, see how you feel. If you do good, then stay at a lower amount. If it gets worse, take a little bit more. And then over a period of maybe 3 or 4 months, maybe kind of wean it down to like 2 milligrams a day and see if that's all you need. But the point is, I wanted to put this focus on this connection between copper and sciatica. It's very interesting, but it doesn't invalidate the necessity to do these stretches. Have not seen this video, you should check it out. It's very, very important.